Okay, guys, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Andrea Epstein with the Direct Impact Podcast. Thanks so much for being with us today. As always, we're here for you. This is all about you. This is all about our journeys, our recovery journeys, and our mental health. And today we are with, I believe, the perfect person to to interview for our particular podcast. And his name is Jason Hopcus, and he is just a champion for cultural change within organizations. And I'm going to tell you, Direct Impact Nation, this is why he's here today, is because he believes that connection to oneself, one's transparency and authenticity, and one's passions, that allows individuals to live wholly authentic and full lives. And that's what we're all about. We're all about generating and creating opportunity to make a direct impact in our own lives, our own families, and future generations. So, I feel like he is the person to come and speak to you today. He presently serves as nonprofit president and CEO of NAMI. And if you're not familiar with NAMI, it is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. He is also the founder of the Connection Project, which is a for-profit company. And we're going to learn a little bit more about the Connection Project today. So thank you so much, Jason, for being with us today. We're going to talk about all things really mental health and awareness, and hopefully some stigma busting and things of that nature. Just remember, guys, on the Direct Impact Podcast, we explore all the many, 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 many ways we might enhance our mental health and leave a positive and life-giving impact in our wake. So, Jason, did I get your introduction correct?
You did. One thing I want to add, I'm not the president of National NAMI. I am the president and CEO of NAMI for Arapahoe and Douglas counties. For some context, is the largest affiliate in the state of Colorado from a membership perspective. So just one clarification there, but otherwise you did perfect. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well,
I'm glad to be here.
thank you for that clarification. It's great work that y'all do. And I think that's the question I really want to lead with, Jason, is tell our listeners about NAMI and just the amazing work that the national organization has been doing since 1979.
Yeah, so we've been around a long time. For those of you who don't know about NAMI, NAMI is a national organization that has representation in every state. And then normally geographically within a state, there are affiliates, which I happen to lead. Like I said, one of the largest affiliates in the state of Colorado. We serve roughly 1 million people in the 2 counties that I support. So statistically, if you look at people that are struggling with mental health or impacted by mental health, it's a lot of people. We've been around more than 30 years now, so we have quite a stakehold here in Colorado. But really, NAMI's job is, especially at the affiliate level, is to provide education, support, and outreach programs for family members and loved ones who are impacted by mental health. So it's a big call to action. We lead a lot of support groups. Most of them are virtual, so people listening, if you're from somewhere outside of the state, you certainly can dial into one of those and email us to get connected. But our goal is really to help people get better connected, and recognizing that in times of struggle and or crisis, that things don't have to be so hard, and that you're not alone, and there are other people that can help you.
Yeah, and it's great work, and an amazing organization. Our nonprofit Hugs Heads Up Guidance Services, and just the work I've been doing for the past 20 years, we stay in close contact with NAMI and the work they're doing, and try to get a lot of our clients and their family members and loved ones connected, because it's a wealth of knowledge and support, and it's just great to know you're not alone.
Well, you certainly are going to find people who understand. That's the thing. I came to NAMI after my own personal situation, a breakdown, quite frankly, and really, from that level of support that I received, it really became a springboard for what has ensued for the decade since, and the work that I've been doing here.
Wow. I love that, because our passions give purpose to our past, don't they?
They absolutely do.
I love that. I love that. And I love that saying. We're definitely going to link to NAMI National, and also for our Savannah, Georgia listeners, we're going to also link to our local chapter. And like, Jason said, please, a lot of the meetings are virtual. So, just check out the schedule and see what works for you and your
We are more
time and time
connected than
zone.
ever before. I will say that.
Yeah, and I think we can at this stage in the game look at all of the places that we can experience gratitude for COVID.
Right. There are many gifts of COVID, and among
Yeah,
them are, um, being able to build this network of connection that didn't exist prior to that. And frankly, technology wise, if this had happened 5 years sooner, I don't know that we would have had the infrastructure to support what we all had to adapt to very quickly.
yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I also express gratitude quite often for the spotlight that it was able to shine on mental health
Right.
and the importance and the value we need to place on our mental health.
Absolutely. I mean, it certainly opened the door for people to be able to talk about things they were struggling with. I think that the dark side of it is it has shown a light on the demand is far greater than the supply of help professionals that can do this work. So it's important for
Mhm.
organizations like mine to be able to show up to supplement, the good work that you guys do as clinicians, to really help people in times of need.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's so well put, because there definitely are not enough licensed and definitely not quality
Right.
clinicians to serve the need, to meet that need. So yes, it just makes, NAMI even more valuable. Let us know, our listeners, a little bit more about your for-profit that you founded, the Connection Project.
Yeah, so Connection Project was founded out of my work at NAMI and
Hmm.
recognizing that so much of what we've historically done was tailored to chronically or persistently mentally ill peers and their loved ones. So primarily family support. We do a lot of family support for people who have loved ones that are really impacted for long or extended periods, or perhaps the rest of their lives. But recognizing that, what about the rest of us? Those of us who go through a life transition issue, have a setback, loss of a job, loss of a loved one, pet, just a bad time where we don't show up in the way that we wanted to, and recognizing that we are struggling at alarming rates, and there's not a good place for a lot of people to get plugged in. And I pulled from my own experience, in my dark night of the soul, and recognizing that it just shouldn't be so hard for people to get connected. And I come from a place of privilege. I'm a white guy. I had insurance, I had some money, I had a supportive family. And I will tell you, and again, this is more than a decade ago, it was the hardest thing ever to figure out where to turn for support when I was struggling in a very profound way. And
Mm.
frankly, from that understanding and experience, I just recognized it shouldn't be so hard. So, Connection Project, in its essence, our mission is really simple: to connect people more deeply to themselves and others. And really, what we have become is an entity that builds social impact campaigns for what I'm going to consider vulnerable or marginalized communities. And when I say vulnerable or marginalized, what we look at is, what are the communities that we see that have high substance use and misuse disorder rates, have high rates of depression and anxiety, have high suicide rates or suicidal ideation? What are those communities that we know are really impacted by mental health? So some examples would be, youth is a huge community that we do a lot of support with. I've done a lot of work with youth specifically, and I'm continuing to do so. Responders, that is a community that has really struggled, specifically
Absolutely.
with what
Yeah.
we've been through in the last 2.5 years. Looking at those communities, and then we'll go and figure out what are the resources that are available to them. How can we connect with them to those through technology? We'll often set up a podcast series and bring in the greatest and brightest minds of those communities to kind of weigh in on where the state of the state is, and then how can we help that community. But really, our goal is to get people plugged in, and then we deliver those messages through digital formats. We have social impact campaigns that we push out through radio messaging, social media, TV spots, etc. But we've done that in a really significant way, both regionally and nationally.
Well, that is really impressive. And I'm very proud to hear it just because I know how needed it is.
It is
Uh,
so needed. And I cannot stress enough for those listening, the need is greater than it's ever been. And that's the sad reality or state of affairs that we find ourselves in. But I am hopeful that by opening the door through doing work like you're doing and like I'm doing, it has brought some light into the conversation where people will talk about things that they're struggling with that they never would have in years past.
hmm hmm Yeah, and you and I are both very passionate about marginalized communities and how best to serve and how creative can we get
Right.
to serve those communities. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later, but thank
Of
you
course.
for that insight. And there's also that piece of me as a clinician, a psychotherapist who really loves to work within the family systems that sees so much value in connecting whomever the motivated party is in that system. Because as soon as the motivated member starts to make positive change, there is that ripple effect. And
Absolutely.
and it doesn't mean that the family members will follow suit necessarily and start to change, but it's definitely fertile ground and opportunity for change there.
You're 100% correct. I think it lays the groundwork for other people to at least acknowledge that change is happening, that something is shifting, that we're going to do things differently. I mean, frankly, I mentioned a minute ago, I do a lot of work with youth, and I think by and large, and this is not a criticism of anybody that does work in this field, but there's not a single statistic that's trending downward that shows me that what we've done is working. Uh,
Mm,
I think one-on-one work is so valuable. I've done a ton of it myself, but I really think if we want to talk about changing the trajectory or the forward movement of what we're doing in mental health, I think it's going to happen through youth. I think we're going to empower youth with different tools sooner. I think we're going to do a better job of helping parents parent their kids today in today's world with the tools and the technology that has been integrated into our lives. That to me is what I'm most passionate about. And I'm not dispassionate about helping adults who are struggling. I think we will always have a need for that, but I do think that there is some pre-intervention or
early
some
intervention.
some earlier
Yeah.
intervention
Yeah.
work that we can do that would better support longer, more sustainable outcomes as we continue to advance in years.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that's going to, I believe, move the needle, move the
I hope so.
dial in a very lasting way. But I'll tell you another, the flip side of that too is, as an organization that works, yes, with, and I'm speaking of my nonprofit organization, Hugs, they serve families, they serve couples, they serve youth, they serve adults, they do dual diagnosis, they do mental health, they do all these things, but it's hard to fund a nonprofit, or help people to see how funding adults helps the kids. And
Sure.
that's been a real challenge because it's like, let me help you understand how many families are served when adults with children are served, and the lasting impact on the children of recovering adults. That moves the needle too. Mhm.
Well, yeah, and I think we've gotten, we live in a kick the can down the road sort of society, and we assume that if we help
Yeah.
this person, it's going to have this ripple effect, and often it does. But the fact of the matter is, if we can go and do some of that earlier intervention work, I mean, I do a lot of work with youth, and I have to say, by and large, I am so inspired by youth today for a couple of reasons. One, primarily because they'll talk about things that most adults are not comfortable talking about. They'll talk about their struggle, they'll talk about this with their friends, with trusted adults, etc. And really, I think youth are going to change how we see mental health. But I also go back to saying, I don't think we're going to fix mental health talking about mental health. So I think where we have maybe failed in this conversation is we only want to talk about it from the traditional lens that we have always shown up from, when the reality is mental health for youth today, it's part of their vernacular. It's part of who they are, what they do. And the truth of the matter is it encompasses so many more things than what our traditional mental health care system looked at in days of old. It was depression, anxiety, substance use and misuse, etc. The reality is mental health is really broad for youth, and it covers a lot of topics that get complex and deep very quickly. And I think they're going to show us how to navigate that landscape in a way that I think the adults in the room, if we could have done it, we would have done it before now. I am frankly very inspired by our young people today and how they are leading the charge in many topics that impact us all.
I that has been my lived experience in my professional work in the room with my youth as well. I could not support that statement more. They really are inspiring.
And their willingness to show up and educate about things like that, to me, is what's passion that I'm so passionate about. I mean, I've had a national podcast with youth for quite some time, and really just having these conversations with them and understanding from them firsthand, how different mental health is in the realm of their contextualized worlds, is really fascinating to me. And I think it sets some guideposts for places that we can go collectively.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. I love that. Um, so sticking with the same topic, but I would love for our listeners to just understand a little bit more from your perspective about like in the year 2022, maybe 2023, by the time we're listening to this. Um, what are some ways that people can really significantly improve their mental clarity and their mental health without spending a lot of money?
That's a great question. And I think it's super simple. Think about the things that you have within your tool arsenal already that you can take advantage of. Taking a walk around the block, getting 15 minutes of sun on your head, drinking enough water, getting enough sleep, healthier nutrition, talking to friends, making a point to connect with others throughout the day. Like, none of those things cost any money. Granted, they take a little bit of effort to do or to integrate into your lives.
Mhm.
But I guarantee you, if you are in a space that isn't great and you get out and you go walk around the block and get 15 minutes of sun on your head, I'm not saying it's going to fix it, but you will feel different and you will feel better, even if it's for a moment. And I think the thing that we shortcut or discount in looking at those really simple free approaches to supporting ourselves is it's just sometimes too easy. And I am always shocked when I remind people of those things. They're like, oh, you think I can take a walk around the block and it's going to make me feel better? Yes, I guarantee you, just go try it.
Yeah.
And they'll come back and they'll say, oh, I do feel better about that. Like, just those opportunities to get present with yourself
Uh-oh.
and then and do that. It's not a one and done. And I think we assume that, oh, I took a walk, around the block on Wednesday and I felt better for that 5 minutes. Well, do it again. Oh, I drank my water I need for the day on Thursday. We'll do that every day. So I think that the thing that's really important to recognize is it's not just a one and done, but if you show up for yourself and you take advantage of the tools that you have available to you right where you are, it will make a difference. And if you continue to do it over and over and over, it will continue to make a difference. And what you focus on may change over time. Practicing gratitude, finding 3 things that you're grateful for at the start of your day or the end of your day or both, can shift what you focus on. And people want to push back and say, oh, that's not true. I don't have anything to be grateful for. I guarantee you, even in the darkest moments, we all have something to be grateful for. And it could be the fact that you've survived 100% of your worst days.
I love that.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think for people to recognize we have tools that we can empower ourselves with in a moment that can shift our entire outlook. To me, it's a pretty straightforward approach.
I agree with you. I completely agree with you. And it's things that we talk about on this podcast. And I think it's things that we all know intellectually. It's the putting it into practice, it's the being consistent, it's building trust with yourself, it's the coming out of the dependency on self-victimization. It's all of that I feel like is holding people back from just taking that walk and going that extra step, calling that friend, reaching out. So I think it kind of bleeds into our next question is like, what are some of the obstacles that you continue to see?
I think some of the obstacles I continue to see start with the system. I think it's the expectation of the system that people are willing to do more, go further, go faster than they actually are. Not everybody is going to go to therapy. Not everybody's going to show up for a support group. Not everybody is going to reach out and say, I am struggling, I need help. I think instead of us assuming that people are going to do that, we have to do a better job of meeting them where they are. And when I say meeting them where they are, it may be as simple as reminding them to take a walk, get some sun on your head, those sort of things. I think the days of assuming that people are going to get in their car or they're going to log into their computer to do a session with you, Andrea, I don't think it's realistic. There are always going to be those people that do it. But, I can say I meet with people all the time that will say, I've had 3 therapists and I don't really see that I made any progress with that. And I'm not here to debate if that's true or not,
Mhm.
even if I
I hear the same thing all the time.
I think the system assumes that people are willing to go further, to do more, to take action that I don't think actually plays out in real life. Not everybody is going to get in their car or sign into their laptop to do a therapy session. Not everybody's going to figure out how to find a doctor to prescribe them meds. And the reality is while those things are hugely beneficial for many people, the truth is they're just not going to be for everybody. And as humans, that is our individual choice. And if that
Hmm.
delays or postpones your struggle because of your unwillingness to do that, if you actually need it, that's your decision. And I think that from that understanding, we have a real responsibility to better meet people where they are, starting by empowering them with the tools that we just talked about a minute ago, getting some sun on your head, drinking enough water, practicing gratitude. Like, frankly, the system assumes people are willing to jump in and do more when I don't think that the interventions we currently subscribe, they're not easy first steps for most people. I think we have to make the system more approachable and give them an easier on ramp and let them empower themselves first and decide, hey, that's working for me. And I feel like I could process this with a therapist now, or maybe some meds would help me, or maybe I have this other path that I need to pursue instead. Again, I am not here to dictate what a course of action, a healthy course of action is for anybody, because again, this is not a one size fits all solution.
Absolutely not. And I love that. And I love having that accessible on ramp, an accessible on ramp that really does take into consideration individuality and people's level of motivation. I can't
Right.
tell you how often we have consultations. We do free consultations with everybody who wants to receive counseling. And a lot of people are not motivated for counseling yet, or they're not ready for counseling yet. And I love the word yet because I do believe with appropriate resources, at some point they might, or they might find that they don't need it at that point, which is great. But it's just the level of motivation and making sure that everybody at whatever stage of change they are in receives care.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that frankly, if more people were willing to pursue a traditional path of healing,
Mhm.
recovery, I think the world would look much different than it does today.
Sure.
But again, it's not a criticism of the system or anybody choosing a path for themselves at work. I think people have to individualize what's best for you. And of course, there are those times in your life where what you're going to need is far different than what we're talking about here, and that's a completely different scenario.
Hmm.
But you know, I think giving people the ability to choose what works for them is important. But again, I add, but you should also look at the things that you're willing to do committed and consistently. Because from my experience, the things that we're willing to do committedly and consistently are the things that become habits and make a difference in the direct impact of your outcomes.
I love that. The direct
One,
impact of
one
your
and done
outcomes.
doesn't fix mental health usually.
Yeah, but I also love what you're talking about because you're talking about empowering people from where they stand.
Right.
Like you said, meeting them where they are, very non-judgmentally, of course, because we all find ourselves in very unique and sticky spots in our lives, right?
Well, and I mean, wanting somebody to get better, if you have a sick loved one and you want them to get better, that's wonderful. You can show up and support them in whatever way you're able to.
Mhm.
But the fact of the matter is, they may not want that for themselves. And I
Absolutely.
think we have to be able to stand in that understanding to know that just because you want something for somebody doesn't mean that they'll actually ever get it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We know you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it
Right.
drink. We know that intellectually. But, when our heartstrings are being pulled for the people we love, there is that tendency to overcompensate, do the work for them, right? Right. But when they do reach out, the family members reach out for those resources, sometimes they find the benefit in, turning that towards themselves and focusing on, their internal control and what can they control, and it's self change and self love. So,
Well, I mean, I don't think that it has ever served anybody poorly to do work on themselves. And I mean, I will go back to the work that we do at NAMI. I mean, so much of that is built on family support. I mean, I would say by and large, two-thirds of our work is family support versus a third for peers. I've led a peer support group every Monday night for years, a decade now,
mm,
of peers that are struggling with mental health. And I will say, the ones who fare the best are the ones who show up with a willingness to say, this is too painful to keep doing this, and I'm willing to take actions to make a difference. And again, that could be an incremental baby steps, but their willingness to show up and keep doing the work, it pays off. I mean, I've worked with thousands of people at this point, and I can say there are some
mhm.
phenomenal success stories of people who showed up to help themselves. And I don't think approaching mental health is really any different than saying, I want to go to school to get educated about something else, or I want to learn a new trade for a role that I'm interested in professionally.
Mhm.
I think any opportunity we have to strengthen or deepen that connection to ourselves and then others, like frankly, I don't know why people wouldn't run towards that, but that doesn't seem to play out.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and again, we have to respect that's people come to things in their own timing or not.
Absolutely. And I love that. Just respecting people where they are, and encouraging them to show up for themselves.
Right.
Um, because we do. We all, gosh, sometimes 1 minute at a time are making a decision to show up for ourselves.
Exactly.
Like literally 1 minute at a time. How do I want to show up,
Right.
for me in this moment? So yeah, it's a process for sure. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit, Jason, about, both of us are CEOs for nonprofit organizations. I'm a founder and CEO of Hugs, and you're CEO for NAMI. And we've both have for-profit businesses as
Right.
well.
Right.
But I just wanted to I thought it was a great opportunity to have just a rich conversation around our passions for why we do what we do.
Sure.
You've done a good job, I believe, throughout of highlighting your purpose and your passion. But talk to me a little bit more about your mission through the Connection Project and the work you do.
That's a great question, Andrea. Thank you. Really, when I had my breakdown more than a decade ago, which I am now lovingly going to call a breakthrough, I came from a community of um, successful, educated, had climbed to the top of the ladder, had achieved the American dream, most things that everybody, aspires or says they aspire to or think they should aspire to. And when it all came crashing down, being a white privileged male, um, with some resources, the fact of the matter is I was none of those privileges bought me any different access, um, quite frankly. And most men that had gone through what I went through probably would have ended their lives. And I will tell you, there was a solid year that I considered it every single day.
Hmm.
But there was also that mustard seed of faith that for me was God. If I make it out of this, let me show up to make a difference and help other people. So, very early on, my role to serve became evident to me. And in the beginning, I had no idea how I was going to do that. And frankly, I've mentioned I've led a support group for more than a decade now. in the very beginning, my first entree to NAMI was showing up as a participant of that support group. And that has played out in me wearing many hats over the course of the years. But my willingness to show up and serve and recognize that I am merely the messenger
Mm-hmm.
and my work is to serve others has guided me really well. And I can tell you by and large, nine conversations out of 10 are not about me. I have a story, a deeply personal story that brought me to this work, and it has been the foundation for everything that came since. But really, at this point in my career, it is how do we do more to create scale to serve other people? Because as I mentioned earlier, the supply for the demand of need is far less
Mm-hmm.
than we need. Um, and I think from the level of technology that we are able to access today, I think we have the ability to create scale and meet people where they are in a way that we never have before. That fascinates me. And again, I'm not saying it is a replacement for the type of work that you do one-on-one with a client, but the reality is if somebody's struggling or in crisis, if we can empower them or connect them more easily
Mm-hmm.
with resources or tools that could make a difference that they can choose to take advantage of and empower themselves with, I've done my job. That
Absolutely.
that to me is my
Mm-hmm.
job. It is to empower people with tools and resources that can help them if they are struggling. And to by and large underscore at every level, you are not alone. Because I can say in my own dark night of the soul, I felt completely alone and didn't think anybody else understood. And it frankly took me years to recognize that there were people who had been there and so much worse, and I got through that by the grace of God that brings me to this place to show up and serve others.
Mm. I love that. I love that. And I also just want to honor your story and how you were able to take that dark night and turn it into passion and a desire to serve and empower others on their dark nights. I mean, I feel like that's what it's all about.
Well, frankly, it was built
Mm.
from I had a life that was everything that I could have wanted, that was all about me. I got everything I wanted,
Mm.
and I was miserable.
Hmm.
And it
Yeah.
was not meant to last. And it went away in an epic, outstanding fashion. And really, when you look at how much energy and effort you put into creating something that wasn't built to last, that really didn't fill your cup at the end of the day, that changes you. And I knew moving forward to build a new life, it couldn't be that life. I mean, I blew my entire world up. I lost a lifetime of work. I had a huge career, and lost my house, lost my cars, I lost everything. And really what I lost was my mind, but what I also lost was that being a hamster on a hamster wheel and saying I'm going to continue to show up and do more of this crazy making. And I am so grateful, even as painful as it was. And it was years of pain, and it was years of therapy and years of work to unearth that, to be at this place. But it was all meant to be. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that from that understanding, if somebody is listening, recognize what is meant for you will not pass you by, and there are no mistakes. And even if you're going through hell, keep going, because you don't know what's around the corner. And most people assume that they can control the outcomes in their lives, and that everything's going to work out a way exactly the way that they imagine. And I'm just going to call that out and say that's not true. Like, things never work out exactly the way we imagine them,
Uh,
and they work out far better.
the phrase "we make plans and God laughs" comes to
Right,
mind.
right,
Yeah,
right.
because
and
there's a
and really,
bigger and higher purpose that we just don't see.
right. And if you think that the purpose begins and ends with you, it's not. That's not the truth.
Mhm.
You're fooling yourself. Like, there's something bigger here. and
Mhm.
and if people take the opportunity to get plugged in, that's why those walks are so important. That's why the sun on your head is so important. That's why gratitude is so important. Like, literally, if you're filling your cup, it's easier to pour into somebody else's. Start with you.
Mhm. But it also sounds like one of the ways that you and we as human beings have found that you can preserve that humility is to serve.
100%.
And I love that. And I have also experienced the power of that. You find yourself humbled, and counterintuitively, we need to preserve that.
Well, and I think from a humbling perspective, it is quickly easy to recognize it could always be worse. What you're going through could be worse. And
Absolutely.
from that understanding, and I'm not saying go out and seek to find some train wrecks worse than the one that you created for yourself by any stretch, but it is true. It could always be worse. And from that understanding, you can then glean a glimmer of hope that, gosh, maybe it's not so bad, and maybe it could be even better. Go there.
Yeah. And I think that's a great segue into a call of action for our listeners. If there was just one thing they could do this week, something small that they could implement that really could be a shift for them, what would that be? What do you recommend?
Take a walk around the block, get 15 minutes of sun on your head,
Okay.
drink enough water, practice gratitude.
Okay. And I love all of those
And if
things.
you can't do all of that, do one.
Okay. Which
And then
one?
do it,
Which
do it
one
again.
this week? Which one this week?
You pick. That's the beautiful thing. It's your choice. It's an a la carte menu. You've sat down at the Cheesecake Factory. You've got that
Oh
huge
my
menu.
gosh, that's a
You
huge menu.
you pick. And if you can't land on one, just do one. And if it feels responsive, do it again.
Yeah.
Just it's as simple as that. Start there.
Well, they are all three disruptors in a very positive way, and can create a positive shift for all of our listeners to make a direct impact this week. So
I agree.
I love it. I love it. So for all of our listeners who are just like, I got to get some more of this Jason Hopcus, where do they find you?
Yeah, so I'm pretty easy to find. My website's realpeoplereallife.org. You can listen to any podcast I've been on if you want more content like this. There's lots and lots of them. I'm on all the social media channels under my name, Jason Hopcus. You can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Seek me out there. I'm super responsive. Any of my web pages, the one I just gave you, are at namiadco.org. We've got contact pages on each of those. You can reach out. I'll get back to you. I just want to underscore you're not alone. And if you're struggling and need help, help's available.
I love that. And thank you for that reminder for
Yeah.
all of our listeners, because, guess what? We are all human beings and we all will struggle. That is for sure.
Having a human experience.
Yes, absolutely. Humans having human experiences. So thank you so much for joining us today, and, for the work that you do and your servant's heart, and for making a direct impact.
Andrea, it was a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate you.
Thank you.